Hey, what is going on YouTube? Ron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day here. And we've got a fun one for you guys in today's video. Just take a look at this beautiful German destroyer here, the Karl von Schönberg. But before we get into the deep dive of it, let's go ahead and review the stats, commander guide, and all that good stuff in the beginning of this video, starting off with our modifications. As always, aiming system mod 1, propulsion in slot 2, concealment for 99.9% of my destroyers in slot 3, and we went ahead and went with reload, the gun reload rather, in slot 4. You could argue for the torpedo reload, but I think the guns are pretty decent. And considering that this ship comes with the option to equip a reload booster, the gun reload in slot 4 there just makes a lot of sense. But there is the sonar, 5.6 of ships. You got yourself a near Z52 type sonar there in terms of your ships. I believe a standard engine boost here, and of course the smoke and or the reload booster. Now we actually went with smoke in the game that I'm going to highlight for you guys. I think it's just the better overall choice, but for the meme potential, and if you can maybe kind of work a unique build with potentially mortar there, more of a gun-oriented build. Pop on that reload booster, go out and absolutely decimate broadside cruisers. These 150mm guns will absolutely shred anything that gets in their way. The DPM is a touch slower, as you can see, a 4-second reload there with an 11.2 firing range. But honestly, there is no greater feeling than connecting a citadel from a destroyer into the broadside of a cruiser. Your torpedoes are pretty mid, 8.5 kilometer range there with a 60 knot speed and a 90-second reload. AA defense is honestly pretty abysmal. Maneuverability is moderate, I would say, 37.1 knot speed, a 690 turning circle, and a 4.4 rudder. Concealment with Bay as a commander, and of course a camo is 5.3, of course concealment module as well. And here is kind of where I actually surprised myself. I went ahead and looked at my stats. Now this is, of course, I believe from the rental phase as well. So a 90% with 10 games in this ship. I think this ship is a perfect example of a ship that is very consistent. I don't think the ship is overly strong. It's certainly not weak, but I don't think it's even top tier at tier 7 in terms of destroyers. The guns feel a little inaccurate. You do only get 4 of them, of course. Your torpedoes aren't anything to write home about. But everything that this ship comes equipped with, as you can see here, tough, extended sonar, and barrage, I think it's just a good overall consistent package that is definitely needed for most games in terms of influencing the cap, eliminating enemy destroyers, and potentially damaging the broadsides, and then shooting other ships with your HE and potentially setting fires. Something to note as we go over our commander here is you actually do get quarter pen HE, and what that means is the HE rule in this game is typically divided by 6, but for Germans, most German ships, it's actually divided by 4, so you get a pretty good amount of HE pen there. But reviewing our commander here, Eric Bay, as always, Observant Rage. Look at me now. We are running Twist and Track as opposed to Perceptive here, and here I'm just kind of highlighting this second slot. Mortar and actually that sonar perk are pretty decent choices in the second slot here, but we just went with the standard Look at Me Now build. The Germans have a little bit slower turret traverse, which is why I went with Twist and Track. Perceptive is also always a good choice as well. Torpedo Royale, and of course Unstoppable as our legendary perk, with Mordoff and Sims as our inspirations. I really like Sims over something like Swirsky and just that double concealment. Because you get that added extra health, and with how much I'm running and gunning in this ship, I think it's definitely necessary. But here we get a nice little beautiful cinematic view of the ship. The German destroyers are just such beautiful ships to me. But without further ado, let's get right into the game. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen, the Karl von Schönberg on Riposte here. This, of course, was captured from our live stream last night. And if you have been playing this game for any amount of time, you know that playing and even streaming on update days, like, well, listening to your wife, fiance, or girlfriend, well, talk about anything. But anyway, here, we are on the ACAP. We're going to go ahead and move into that. I play this ship rather aggressively, having a little bit more HP, that sonar which extends beyond our concealment range, the smoke, and just decent overall guns. It is a great package to push forward aggressively. Now, of course, you have to watch out. There was a game earlier, I think I ran into a Michelangelo. Obviously you have to watch out for radar cruisers and potential carriers spotting you and, catching you out of position early. But if you can get a situation like this into this early cap, you are giving your team a huge advantage. Utilizing our skill twist and track here, we can see the relative location of the closest enemy ship, and that is kind of where we are throwing our zoning torpedoes. I put them on each side of the islands here, just in a guess that if it is a destroyer, he's going to work around that island close to it or potentially go wide. But regardless, we're kind of slowly easing in here in a situation where we don't want to overcommit, as there's a perfect example of why. That Helena was rounding that island. If we overcommit and the destroyer spots us, there is an American light cruiser that is absolutely going to blap us. But because of our position here, we are able to spot him for our team, and we actually have some decent zoning torpedoes on direction for his location. That, of course, is right before our team kind of blaps a broadside cruiser there. I'm not sure what took them so long, but it doesn't matter, and I'm actually thankful for it, as we actually do get a nice little torpedo hit here to help increase Aaron's torpedo accuracy. But as we mentioned earlier, pretty mid torpedoes, if you want to call them that. 7,500 damage there with a hit on the bow. We did manage to get a flood, but it doesn't matter. Our team did a beautiful job in getting that early elimination. And here is just a really rough spot for this battleship. At this point in time, I'm thinking, there's got to be a destroyer around here. Either he's flanking wide or he abandoned his cap and went back towards the other flank. And in either situation, what we're going to try and do is get a few torpedoes on this target. And reading game flow, you can see that the enemy is pretty strong over there at Charlie. So the longer we meander over on this flank, the less opportunity we will have on the other side. Now, again, this requires nuance, talking about, situational awareness, what to do in these types of situations. I don't want to leave this guy and potentially this other destroyer without making sure that my team has a good advantage on this side without having it fully secured. And what we mean by that is you can see that this Nelson is reversing. If he gets behind this island, I'm not going to go all the way around behind the island and chase him. I'm going to try and get a few points of damage either with my guns and or torpedoes. I don't really want to give up my position here, so we're not utilizing our guns, even though these guns do hit pretty hard. On top of that, the Nelson is probably the worst threat to a destroyer with that devastating HE. So again, we're just going to try and get a few torpedoes on target. After my team gives, a good amount of damage to him, we are going to either flank behind in this situation or cut back across the middle and support our weak side. I know that this video has turned into a little more of an informational one rather than kind of a first look on the Schönberg, but all of these things are things you need to be thinking about when you are playing destroyers here. And I think the Schönberg kind of highlights all of them. It can spot, it can cap, it can do damage, maybe other than potentially flanking behind the enemy and getting torpedoes. And here's a situation which we all just love to see on the blue team and absolutely despise on the red team, an AFK destroyer. Why is it always destroyers? I'm not exactly sure. And of course, it's a video game. I've had to leave before. Somebody's knocked on my door. But after going AFK, 2, 3, 4, 500 times in a row, I think there should be some potential penalty because you are just kind of ruining the experience for others. But alas, we are going to take full advantage of this situation here. And I think, but I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but I think I actually connect a triple fire on this Fletcher in this upcoming salvo here. I had to look back at it, and yeah, that's a triple fire. I wasn't shooting at anything else. I did, but I think have a flood on the Nelson, but regardless, that is...
Did we get a triple fire on a Fletcher?
But that is honestly how RNG went for me last night, and is just one of the reasons we love to hate this game. So but anyway, talking about kind of reinforcing our weak side here, our team actually did a good job of playing defensively over there on the Charlie Cap. A huge shout out to our destroyers. And now the red team is essentially... they're encircled, right? We've got the flank behind them. There are no other ships that we have to worry about, with the exception of the enemy Friesland, and our sonar actually outranges his, and I believe he has taken a few points of damage, and considering we have all of our health, that engagement would probably be relatively easy. We also have a few ships in support behind us. If you guys notice, I was actually looking at the guns of the John Bart. Initially, his guns were turned in our direction, and it was only at which point he turned away to shoot at the ships in front of him, at which I started opening up. Just a little something you can think about. as of course, if the guns were aimed at us, he could have gotten an easy shot off. And granted, like I said, we have our smoke screen, we have all of our health, but it's just small things to save HP. You know, shooting 2 seconds or 5 seconds earlier there, it wasn't going to get us anything except for, you know, a few hundred points of extra damage here. And just overall, you know, objective tactical thinking, you just want to wait to get that little added advantage. And speaking of advantages and isolating your engagements here, you'll notice that we're kind of taking this direction, this route to the island here, and that is to isolate our engagements, right? If we can position ourselves behind this island, we have teammates spotting for us. On top of that, that island will allow us to go concealed, so we can take a few shots around this island as you see a few salvos from the Weimar come our way, and alas, we are undetected. And here you can actually just see the damage output of these guns. We're getting some pretty decent HE hits, and we actually switched to the AP a little bit there, and we were chunking the side of that Jean Bart at, what, 8 or 9 kilometers there. So these guns hit relatively hard. And you guys will actually see a little bit more of that in this engagement right here. We saw this Indianapolis, which is a radar cruiser with some pretty decent 203mm guns coming around this corner. So we don't want to give up ourselves unnecessarily as we get the nice elimination with the fire on the Jean Bart there. So we're going to pop our Hydro as he pops his sonar to give us a little bit of an advanced warning, meaning, you know, we know the direction that he is going. Also, a little tip you guys can use is you can pull out your torpedoes if you have them. Obviously, in most destroyers, with the exception of the Friesland, you have those torpedoes, and that tells you where the ship is going. So in this situation here, we're actually going to launch a set of torpedoes long, and then we're going to launch a set short. Why? Well, he sees the set of torpedoes that are going long, and this is kind of why I said that this guy played this engagement well. He is sort of nosing himself around this island here while simultaneously turning out. Now, again, I chose a widespread because I wanted to cover all angles, and coincidentally enough, he turns just enough to where he manages to miss those torpedoes, which is why it's sometimes just better to use the narrow spread. But there is a perfect example of how strong these guns can be. A few pens there, and one of which was even a Citadel. And this was a situation where I really wish I had my reload booster, but he actually, I believe his sonar runs out, or he is outside of his range there, and we still have ours going, and we are able to freely farm him within the safety of our smoke screen. Now, of course, we do exit it here just to kind of get the final finishing touches here on his superstructure, as he actually gets a moderate hit on our modules there, incapacitating a few. But with that elimination, we have a nice 3 eliminations, and there's still a little bit of damage left with the superstructure left of that Kansas, so we're going to go ahead and lob that, still, again, utilizing that island cover, until, of course, our team absolutely obliterates him, but he is the only thing really left to shoot at, so, yeah, he wasn't going to be lasting very long, very similar to me in bed. But anyway, a huge shout out to this Friesland as we actually get our 3rd assist. So a combination of a Kraken and a Yoinkin. I think Toons in my video yesterday said Yoinkin, and I'm not sure if he's the first person to say that, but that is an excellent description for the assist medal. But if you guys are actually looking at the damage total right now, like I said, the Friesland kind of gave himself up. Shout out to him for not dragging the game on. There's nothing more frustrating than a destroyer sailing to the corner when the game is clearly over. But a good little series of medals there. Now, of course, they had an AFK Fletcher, so this game was probably over from the onset, but that is, alas, update day. We had a few teammates who, yesterday, they probably would have been more effective if they were AFK, but anyway there, a 2898 total with 3 kills, 100,000 damage, a few torpedo hits, and a good display of the barrage that the guns can provide. So a fun little ship here. I certainly wouldn't recommend buying out the campaign, but this is one that if you've been kind of away from the game for a little bit, it would be one that I would potentially come back just to maybe fulfill, that, and of course whaling all the Black Friday stuff. It's over like $200 to whale all that stuff. That's an upcoming video for sure. But that is the Karl von Schoenberg there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you guys think of this destroyer down below. I love you guys. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.
Winning side of that.